so much for that introduction. My colleague and old friend, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa is here. And we have a saying that when you are a serving ambassador, you are a distinguished ambassador, and when you are a retired ambassador, you are an extinguished ambassador. So I think I'll start off by referring to some salient points which I wish to make. First is the location of India itself. We are located between the Persian Gulf, which is today possesses almost 80% of the world's excess requirement of oil production. I'll come to the details later. And it has an estimated 40% of the proven reserves of gas in the world. That is just across our borders to our west. And to our east, we are fortunate to have the fastest growing economic region in the world, which is ranges from Asia and extends across the Western Indian Ocean into the South China Sea. So we are located at this junction of huge availability of energy resources and simultaneously the largest demand for energy resources. I say this because a couple of things need to be borne in mind. That most surveys indicate that the share of oil in power production and energy production is declining. It will decline to around 30% by 2030. In the case of gas, the share of gas is going to rise, and by 2030, energy production from gas will be equivalent to that from oil. But as far as we are concerned, and China, which is the other major producer of energy, is concerned in this region in Asia, predominantly we are dependent on coal, and I'll come to that later. The other point to be borne in mind is that the energy demand, the rate of demand and its share in global energy of the OECD countries is set to decline. That the demand overall for oil will grow from its present level by about an addition of 16.8 million barrels per day by 2030. And of this, 13 million barrels per day will be the increase in demand from non-OECD countries, and therefore predominantly from Asia. So the excess demand for oil and gas is largely going to come from Asia, and I said we have next to us on our west the Persian Gulf oil rich. I mean, for example, China now produces, I'll go to China and India. This oil consumption is estimated to grow from 8 million barrels per day presently to around 17.5 million barrels per day by 2030. The other point is that in this period, Saudi Arabia is likely to increase its production from 15.5 million barrels per day to 21.5 million barrels per day. So largely the increases in Asia, or rather in China, can largely be met by excess gas production alone. The other factor we have to bear in mind, and because we talk about the region, is that we would hope that Iran will emerge from its the restrictions which it faces. And most importantly, I think the most significant contribution to expanded oil production is going to come from Iraq. Iraq is expected to continue to contribute 20 to 25% of the growth of global oil production between now and 2030. And therefore, I think what is extremely important for us, and I'll come to share later, is much greater cooperation with Iran on the one hand and with the countries of the GCC, which is the 6 Arab Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman. So these are, and Bahrain. These are the countries which we really are focused on. For us, the Arab Gulf countries become extremely important because apart from the fact that we are 70% of our oil presently comes from there, there are 5 million Indians working in the Gulf, in these 6 countries. And they remit back roughly about $35 billion to the Indian economy every year. Now, as far as India is concerned, it is the 4th largest importer of oil in the world after the US, China and Japan, with an import dependency of around 80%. And our demand is likely to grow for crude oil from 190 million tons to 300 million tons by the end of this decade, because we are projecting, despite our present fall in economic growth, a 7 to 8% growth once the economy recovers by 2014 or 2015. And the position on import dependency of gas is somewhat better. An interesting point, and here I wish to make, particularly with regard to India, is we have a surplus oil refining capacity in our country. Oddly enough, our largest market was Iraq of refined oil. And India exports roughly about $44 billion worth of oil, finished oil products. It's a major contributor to our exports every year. And as I think the ambassador has already referred to our overseas development projects and investments, which amount to about $15 billion in 14 countries. But we are also seeking opportunities for shale gas, further opportunities in Iraq and Africa, and also further investments in shale gas in the United States, where both the Indian public and private sector are involved in shale gas. The other important point for us is coal. We produce currently around 540 million tons of coal, but coal expansion is really is going to rise to about 795 million tons by 2016-2070. So we need a huge amount of coals, not just for energy, but for our growing steel industry, because we don't produce any coking coal. And this is largely going to be met from countries from our east, notably Australia and Indonesia, and from our west, from South Africa. Coming to shale, I think a few points. Coming to shale gas, the US, as everybody has mentioned, is set to change the paradigm of energy consumption in the world, because shale gas is already being discovered, and the US has an estimated reserve of 24.4 trillion cubic meters of shale gas. China has also got vast reserves, but China is going to have problems of population, environment, water, much less than on scale. It already has signed 16 contracts in 19 shale blocks through its foreign, through its state-owned firms with foreign bidders. But the estimated investment is just about 2 billion, which is really the amount that, more than that, our Indian private companies are investing in shale. And the other development is really coal-based, coal-bed methane, which India is developing. We have not yet finalized our regulatory regime for shale gas. That will, I expect, to get done. But again, like China, we're going to have problems of population, settlements, water pollution, and India has a very strong environmental lobby, and shortage of water, drinking water. So shale gas is going to be a much tougher thing with us. Now, what we feel is that shale gas production in the US and Argentina, together with the vast potential energy resources of Canada, are set to significantly change the geopolitics of the world. By 2020, according to a study in the Harvard University, the US could produce, firstly, 11.6 billion barrels a day. It will be the largest producer of oil in the world after Saudi Arabia. It's already, shale gas prices in the United States are falling. It is $3 per TCF, and while it is $10 to $11 per TCF in Europe, and for those of us who import from in Asia, we are paying $15 per TCF. So there is a vast price differential which exists between US production today and what the Gulf countries are selling to us. Now, the US will become a significant importer of shale gas, I believe, by about 2018. Its import dependency from the Gulf is virtually going to end. It will move to Venezuela, and it will get much more from what the Canadians are producing, though there are pipeline problems. And therefore, this is going to have a profound effect on the geopolitics of Asia. And what is more important is, with the transatlantic partnership being talked about, with oil importing terminals, their former ones being on the East Coast, much of their export is going to go to the European Union, to the European countries on the shores of the Atlantic, more so than one can expect across the Pacific. Moreover, the United States has confirmed that the bulk of its export will go to free trade partners, and they are putting up for the Pacific the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think the major beneficiaries of surplus gas for marketing across the Pacific will be Japan and perhaps South Korea. The subcontinent, the rest of Southeast Asia, I'm afraid, will still remain very largely dependent. But what impact this has on prices of gas and oil remains to be seen. Frankly, as a consumer, I would like a certain stability instead of the periodic surges which the OPEC imposes on us, which often tends to destabilize our economies. The other point is that one other significant development, there are emerging signs that Israel could well emerge as a significant exporter of gas. There are huge resources of gas being discovered in Israel. Israel has signed agreements with Canada and with Russia. President Putin's visit, I believe, was primarily concerned with energy in Israel, his visit to Israel. But there are going to be problems here, like there have been in the Persian Gulf. The offshore Levantine basin, in which Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, Greece, Israel, Cyprus, and Gaza have territorial claims, is believed to have 1 trillion TCF of natural gas reserves, but these maritime boundaries are not well demarcated. So I think how it plays out in that region is yet to be seen. Will it lead to tensions? One doesn't know. Will Turkey and Greece be able to settle their differences? How the Cypriots have served in Cyprus are going to sort that one out remains to be seen. Coming back to the Persian Gulf, I think the basic problem we are having is sanctions on Iran. Iran, we have been tied to Iranian oil supplies. Sanctions have forced us to reduce imports from Iran, not because we have worried about the sanctions, but because virtually every Indian bank is exposed to the West. So working out payments arrangements for Iran has proved a problem. But Iran, I hope, will resolve it. The thing about the problem itself which they face, I think the Iranians are perfectly legitimate in claiming that they have a right to enrichment. But Iran is also a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And we hope that this contradiction will be resolved, because I don't think a country with an ancient civilization like Iran should be isolated in today's world. What we are importing from Iran is largely through banks which have no exposure to the West, but that is highly limited, which we can do. And as I said, working together on this is going to be a problem. Piracy has not yet proved too much of a problem, but again, here we are cooperating with everybody to deal with it. I'd like to add that energy diplomacy now has become a crucial part of our policy. I was recently a member of a task force set up by the National Security Council in India to review Indian national security. 10 years ago, we reviewed only defense and internal security. Today, the National Security Review has energy as being crucial, that is crucial to our growth. A final word on this, since we are here in Thailand. I have spelled out what the United States involvement is likely to be, but I think the advisor to the minister was here and the ambassador is here, and this is my view. I think since we have an architecture for discussing energy problems, we should use the East Asia Summit to develop, and our partnership with ASEAN, to develop a viable policy to deal with the emerging energy challenges. That's point number one. Point number two, I think it's good for India and the countries of South Asia to get together to work with the countries of East Asia on the one side, the consumers on one side, and the producers in the Persian Gulf. For too long has all the politics of energy been dominated by the Europeans, the Americans, and the OECD country. I think we will have to fashion our own networks of cooperation with the Persian Gulf and Asia in developing a viable Asian energy framework, particularly with regard to oil and gas. And I'll conclude with just a little story. The smallest country in South Asia is Bhutan. It is also the richest country in South Asia. It has a rate of economic growth higher than China, 12.6%. Nobody hears of Bhutan, it's so small, but their prosperity is largely built on sale of energy to India, to a larger market. The present capacity is around 3,000 megawatts. It's stated to increase by another 11,000 megawatts, by which time Bhutan could leave us and become an OECD member. Now, that is the merits of cooperation. As the ambassador said, we are in the process of working out arrangements for selling our electricity and power to Bangladesh. I know the IPPAI is involved in that effort. But I would think that with the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline coming in, we hope the situation in Afghanistan will stabilize. The situation within Pakistan will stabilize so that the Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline can come in. And finally, the surplus capacities that we have in finished oil products and in energy in some of our bordering states can lead to the formation of a South Asian energy grid. With Bangladesh, certainly with 500 megawatts in growth, I look forward to similar growth with Nepal. Incidentally, Nepal's hydroelectric potential is 83,000 megawatts, out of which 45,000 are very easily exploitable. If we could do it with Bhutan, I'm sure we will do it with Nepal. Thank you.